today that we'll finish it off with. So we did branding and marketing, we did values now, like what's the vision for Tellor? I guess like the bigger question is like, what are you all going to be working on over the next 2 years? Hopefully we're all still around for the next 2 years and building on this thing, and it's going phenomenal. But to get there, like I'll give like my take on, I guess, where do we think the space is going? Because that's sort of necessary. If you want to know like what we're going to need to do and where we're going to need to be, where's the space going? And like obviously there's like a 1 year, 5 year, 10-year horizon, but we're kind of building for that sweet spot of like the next 1 to 5 years. And you don't want to do anything now, like that's how you fall into like NFT crazes and things like that. But over the next 1 to 5 years, where do we see it? Obviously, the world is now multi-chain. So I think crypto will emerge from this bear market again. And it'll have some new use case. DeFi has obviously found a use case. People will continue to use DeFi, and next time it's going to be even bigger. The tools for wallets for people, the number of, people are just going to get in it. You're going to see more and more, like Maker did, people are going to start issuing loans on these platforms, sell them globally. People are going to be going after some of these yield opportunities with hedge funds. It's going to keep getting bigger, which is awesome. The other thing too is it's going to be multi-chain. So there's Ethereum's going to hopefully successfully move forward with the merge here. I think you're going to see a lot of people just moving to rollups. I don't think there's these side chains now that are coming up, or not side chains, but like alt L1s. I think alt L1s are almost a dead narrative in my mind. I think unless you're a very established one, like a Cosmos maybe, or like something like that, unless you're an L2 off of Ethereum, it's going to be really tough to compete, just because it's so convenient being an L2 off of Ethereum. So
if the bridges are solved, is there going to be really that much appreciable difference between a roll up and another L1?
Bridges aren't solved, but
if in the next 2, you just don't see that happening in the next 2 years.
No, bridges are never going to be solved.
Like the Oracle problems,
but yeah, it's just different trade-offs.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing, I mean, it obviously doesn't really matter too much for us. The big question is going to be, I think you're going to see a lot more centralized roll-up type structures. So it's not going to be completely censorship resistant type stuff. Some of them will be, but like you could easily create like an optimism and stuff like without censorship resistance. And our sweet spot is going to be in the censorship resistant category, but you'll probably see a lot more chains that aren't as censorship resistant and they're just more open about it.
Out of convenience.
Yeah, well, and I think you're going to see a lot more regulatory issues. The Tornado Cash thing was huge. It's going to continue to be a big issue. Lots and lots of people are going to figure out how to launder money on these things, and zero knowledge. Like zero knowledge things are here to stay. Like if you see like, okay, so what does it look like in 5 to 10 years? What's there going to be? There's going to be you're probably going to have like a ZK roll up or some sort of roll up that's completely private. Everything, the smart contracts and everything on there are completely private. You can transfer completely privately. And there's no front running because it's private. And the question is, okay, so like, can we create that? Like theoretically, like we're 5 years away from that being a pretty good possibility. Regulatory wise, not even close. Like that thing will get abused, and you can use it for money laundering, you can use it for anything, but it's just private by default. It's going to be amazing. So like, how can we, if we see, like in my mind, I see that as being something that's gonna happen. So like, how can we make sure, so regulators won't allow it. So then how can we make sure that like we sort of set ourselves up for success in this field? Like private EVM chains. And I think that's another assumption I'm making, like an EVM chains, like rating smart contracts and EVM is sort of one for the next 5 years.
What is that? Yeah, EVM is one.
EVM is one in my mind.
People still come to me and want to learn Rust. I'm like, well,
why.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be tough to beat out the EVM at this point. So that's like my vision. Anybody else have thoughts on my vision
Or
or,
disagree.
yeah, disagreements?
Yeah, I think something else is the future.
I think there's too much momentum behind EVM. It's where all the, well, it seems that's where the talent is, where the interest is. So many things are built on Ethereum mainnet or on other EVM chains. Yeah, I don't see anything else taking over from.
I'm also relatively bearish on DAOs.
Why? What's wrong about that?
I think for the best, it's really hard to get people to vote on things. It's really hard to get people to care about things. And the
But
best
on a
majority-
large scale, maybe the small scale DAOs still have a great place.
Well, I think from a legal perspective, just looking at it, like, we've talked to lawyers about it, like, what benefit do DAOs provide? And it's, most of these DAOs are doxed people, like, they're not anonymous, they're completely doxed, and you're just like, so if you are doxed in the DAO, like, you're just giving away a lot of your corporate protections. Like, if you're a Delaware C Corp, like, companies have worked really hard for a long time to make sure that you as a CEO cannot go to prison if your corporation does something wrong.
But if you're down something wrong.
If your DAO does
all
something
bets are
wrong
off.
and you're the lead developer who did that, those court cases have not yet been done.
Right.
So not that it necessarily matters as much for Tellor as if DAOs take off or not. But like, I think there are ways that I think new tokens are still gonna happen. People using tokens to bootstrap things. You can have governance tokens. I think over the next 5 years, people are gonna start saying like F you to the SEC, and they're just gonna, like, you're gonna have Uniswaps that from day one have fees built into them, and you get fees taken, and there's fees towards governance token holders. Because that's basically, like, if Tellor makes fees and you're required to vote to get those fees, that's what makes people care and vote, because you get fees. That's how the system sort of makes it, because we know that people don't just vote on their own, but if you force them to vote, if you want any reward, now you have a system that's sort of crypto economic in a way. So that's how I'm thinking about it. So, Brendan. Nothing. Owen, Graham, Tally, anything?
When are we setting our countdown timer for when we're fired?
Do you
Just like automatic things, just automatic.
Yours
What?
So no.
Yeah.
What do you say?
So it depends, like, we can, it's not necessarily that we all want to be fired. Like, I think our jobs are just gonna shift. So, we do get this token revenue, and if Tellor is successful, the token will hold value and we're gonna make this money, but it's a question of what do we do? So, if you look at like a really mature ecosystem like an Ethereum, there's still people you want to pay, like whether it's you're funding a grants organization, whether it's, like, you still have like core contributors that it'll be a lot of just maintenance of the software, but you want to just maintain it, and have somebody do it, and that's not a bad thing. And then also, like I said, like I've said this before, like I hope like 90% of our job is like we organize a hackathon once a year. Like that would be, like we've really made it. Whenever like setting up TellerCon every year is like a fun job of ours. Yeah, that would be cool.
Setting up people's MetaMasks for them so they can start their crypto journey,
Sure.
or we're onboarding people into the Tellor ecosystem.
Well, and I think too, like as part of any ecosystem, the more successful we get, the more that you become sort of a broader sort of, you have to support the whole ecosystem. So if we're massively successful, our coin is billions and billions of dollars, and Tellor is being used on a massive scale, it is the oracle of choice. People are basically maintaining and using us without contacting us. That's the dream, that's the vision. You do things like Coinbase did, they're funding the Tornado Cash lawsuit. That's awesome. You do things like you have to help people just get into crypto and start developing in general. Like you have to sort of take a bigger mindset. You have to start, it has to become more engaged in the crypto ecosystem as a whole, which is fun. Anyway,
And that was never completely final. Owen. But
Never completely what?
final, that everybody was gonna get
that
fired.
everyone's getting fired, so.
I mean, like, what's our deadline for like when the majority of us are like, all right,
Yeah,
we only need like 3 people to organize this hackathon like once a year, you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's gonna be a lot of
Then
it.
also like what's our deadline for just being completely decentralized other than those like 3 people who need to carry the torch with like hackathons or whatever, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
at a certain point, like you would think that regulators would come for Tellor as well, wouldn't they?
They will. I mean, so like once we move to 360, we can't sort of upgrade anymore. Like anything is, like that's a huge milestone for us as far as decentralization goes. Because like if then we do walk away and just shut down, like nothing happens to
continues.
Tellor. Like it's just fine, which is great.
so after 360 is more of a, making sure that everything works great, that everything is,
Well, we're gonna.
yeah.
I got a whole list of things we can still do, but like I think.
Well, I mean, first we're gonna polish everything before we
Sure.
start off,
I mean, just saying like
otherwise
decentralized,
never
like,
fix something.
yeah, it is a huge milestone, like our smart contracts, getting this upgrade. But our whole process and people interacting with Tellor protocol, like, ain't decentralized. And so
No.
That's
I
what
feel like
we're
it would be
gonna
cool to have a deadline. Like,
There's a huge gap between 360 launching and this point where there's only like 1, 2, or 3 people organizing a yearly banquet. There's like a lot in between that.
yeah.
Well, and I think you had even talked about it on the values call. The more that you can let go is like after you get a little bit of product market fit. Like you want to make sure you have that first before you just let it go. Like if you don't have that crux, like Ethereum obviously has like a product market fit with EVM and that's phenomenal. So like they don't have to push people to use it anymore. It's sort of taken off. We're not there with Tellor. Chainlink's not there. It's like it's not one of those things that any Oracle could say like, okay, this is going to be the standard format for using oracles going forward.
Yeah, and I think you get to that point once you're not doing like white glove integrations. When you're not really touching it, that's when you're like, okay, we're no longer needed.
Yeah.
But how do we get there? That's what we need to focus on after 360.
Okay, so
Integrations. You're gonna keep doing free work and you're gonna tell her.
Yes.
Did we ever give you any Rick tokens for that? I go to the Superfluid guys and I'm like, those Tellor guys, when they integrate, they do the code. The nice you guys do. I'm like, they have like 10% of the staff you have, but you guys really can't make time to help me out with integration.
we have 10% their staff.
Yeah. You guys are like, when I ask, I have a problem, I'm like on a call with you. On a call with them, I'm just like pulling teeth trying to get someone.
Well, now you got Sonny over there.
Yeah, he's not. They never let me talk to him. He does like developer relations. I always get like some.
Oh, that's like
Yeah, it's just like pulling teeth to get some help. So
yeah, people.
That is crazy.
I know, isn't it crazy? I have
like
this.
how many you
I have this
you're like
experience.
90% of
I'm the
your
only
usage.
thing you can do with this Superfluid stream. Like right now, that's all you can.
It's like you should talk to their CEO.
Yeah, I'm talking to the CEO about a licensing agreement because they're starting to use my code all over the place. It's under a Uniswap style. My code is under a Uniswap style business source license.
Oh, that's so
It converts-
lame,
it
man.
converts
That's
to
so-
open source.
That's
It
so
converts to
lame.
open source. What else can I do? Can I run a patent office, pay whatever, like 30 grand is what I get quoted to get a patent on the whole thing? I should have done that because that would be more defensible than what I have now, but
Super lame.
look, it'll be open source and people can use it, but it's just give me 3 years to like get ahead of everyone and make the next thing like version 4 and put that under a business license.
Is he done making excuses?
Yeah.
This
I don't think
is recorded. All right.
Back to the integrations thing. Love the integrations thing. There are plenty of other products I think that could be built around Tellor that, like we talked about, like real estate, ETF kind of things, and indexing things to inflation. I was thinking about making like a a time token, like mint the rest of my career time that I would sell. And then start at $100 and index it to inflation and just be like, this is, and then every year just burn, like every week you're just burning like, I don't know, probably like 5 hours a week for the rest of my life. And then every week just burn 5 tokens. Whoa. Yeah. See, I've let that run my whole life. People want to work with me. It's like, yeah, sure, just go. Good, like, it's okay, I'll work for you for an hour. Like, so stuff like that.
Okay. But I guess, so where do we need to get to? I know we've talked about this, so we've seen the vision for the space. I think we're all kind of in agreement as far as like, well, what does a successful teller look like? You know, as far as the solidity contracts goes, they're just, anybody can deploy them, anybody can use them, anybody can access them. The token is used as far as the staking goes, people actively vote on disputes and are taking part of it, active fees are running back into token holders. That's ideal. That's what we're looking for. As far as censorship, as far as reporters go, we have a broad distributed network of reporters. We have people using multiple different clients, hopefully. You know, whether we support multiple or we just support one as the reference implementation, either way, it's decentralized. People are doing it, they're making changes, pull requests, things like that. Maybe we still maintain one of the repos, but that's sort of ideal. That's kind of how I envision it. Then over time, yeah, we just, you know, slowly it just becomes the standard. This is how you interact with off-chain data, is through, you know, the system for Tellor. Want to expand on it? Any, you know, like, I don't know. That would be like ideally the vision for me. So if like in 5 years, where do I want to be? That's it.
We have a completely stable system, then we literally just
Yeah.
nothing else.
So
And I mentioned it in the call the other day, but people can just easily integrate new types of data themselves.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. And yeah, they just don't have to rely on our white glove handling anymore.
It's a much smaller scale than this, but like I imagine it's what someone like Vitalik feels like when he creates something like Ethereum that takes completely a life of its own, that can be managed and stewarded by anyone and a variety of people that he has no association with or doesn't interact with. And people have free access to create and build on top of that sort of thing. And it sort of takes on a life of its own. And you know, we can look back and look at it and see how it's developed and, you know, kind of like,
Just see the different random
you know, look
feeds
at,
being,
yes.
you know, submitted.
And turning into something maybe we even didn't envision. Maybe we didn't even have a hand in that aspect of it anymore.
now,
That's great.
Yeah. How do we get that? So what are some things that we might have to change? So like, we can't do solidity upgrades, but you can still change the Oracle contract or make it better. So what are some pieces of the system that I see potentially being issues that we may want to change? Some of the issues I think may come around as far as the voting on disputes and the governance contract. If there is, right now the system works with multiple chains, but it doesn't work as well if there's thousands and thousands of chains. If there's thousands and thousands of chains, because as you guys know, the voting on the disputes and stuff, the more reports you have and the more tips you have, that like makes it more secure. And then you have to bridge Tellor over to these specific networks. That could, if there's, each app has a specific chain and the only user on that app is that one chain, it could get, it's not as secure as you could potentially make it. If you had, you could manipulate the vote a little bit easier. So, and you can do that now on newer chains. We know this. There's some ways that you could get around it, basically like having the governance token balances stay on mainnet, and then you could bridge them over. You know, this is like a Yuma style approach. Well, Yuma does all the voting on mainnet, but you could just like bridge the token balances over as far as that goes. So there could be some options there that I would love to explore over time. Nothing that I think is worthy of necessarily talking about right now, but you know, just because now there's like 5 successful chains. We're not quite at the point where there's thousands. There's like, you know, with 5, yes, it works. Our system works just
And
fine.
even in 5 years, do you honestly think it's gonna be thousands? I feel like not 20, maybe. Functioning-
Sure, but
Functioning and with users. with
I'm
actual users.
playing out the game theory in my head, Brenda. We can,
We're good.
Or like, what scenarios can we consider and prepare for, or like,
yeah,
it'd be amazing, it's probably idealistic, but making this Oracle sort of future-proof, no matter which avenue the future takes. You know, like, maybe it's impossible, but like, we should try for it.
for sure.
Do we need to be like trying to account for a future with thousands of chains right now for like the Oracle? Or would it be more beneficial to test like auto pay from, you know, because like that's
Well, completely agree.
a
Yeah,
key component.
we're talking distant future hypothesizing on this call. This is,
Okay.
you know,
Gotcha.
that's like the only thing I see like really needing, could potentially change if the vision plays out. I think,
And ultimately taking our vote weight out of it.
yeah, I mean, taking our team weight out, I think that's gonna be something we can look at over the next year. So I would want to push it to some sort of delegated vote contract, so like 25% of the vote is to delegates. Something like that. And then it's more decentralized than on the team. Or just throw it to the 0 address, something like
I think it just depends how many users we have at the time and whether or not we're stable enough to do that.
Yeah. But then other things, so that's like distant. What are we going to work on now? Oh, the other thing too would be like, if we do go to multiple chains, like right now we have time-based rewards only on mainnet. If mainnet ever goes away and people it's just sort of this roll-up validation chain, it doesn't necessarily make as much sense to do that. So we're figuring out some way to change that. But like I said, not an issue for a while.
Could you clarify, this is maybe me and you don't understand this on the same level, but after 360, what sets of parameters do we have access to change?
Nothing.
Just
No,
it's-
you can just
we
hard
can
forward.
vote on
You
these
just,
things.
it's just, okay,
And then we have to, remember
We would-
when we broke it, when I broke it?
yes, we would do the
We
same
just
thing,
forward.
and we'd
Yeah.
have to go through a migration process.
Well, you could, if there's you could hard fork the Oracle contract and without necessarily hard forking the token contract.
So that's because they're separate
Yeah.
now.
So
So that allows us to
a little bit more
hard fork without having to do anything with the token migration,
Right,
which is huge.
So. But what are we gonna work on now? The biggest thing is, let's just, you know, we've talked about it before. How do we get more users? How do we make sure our thing actually works? The biggest way we're gonna do that, is just continuing to reach out to users, continuing to just implement them for them. The other thing is, we're gonna be doing more and more examples and our own projects. We've talked about doing a dollar auction for ourselves. We've talked about building, you know, more, if you guys think of a cool data type, let's throw it up on chain. You know, this is probably for like more of the guys who do like a lot of the Solidity stuff. Let's throw new data types on chain and give people ideas. They love ideas. People don't come up with their own ideas, so you have to do that.
I asked the CIO in Philadelphia, I'm like, would you, because they're looking for projects in the Oracle space, I was like, is there city data that you would just be willing to like put on chain? Like, I'm sure it wouldn't cost you guys anything, and he just didn't get it. So it's like, why would we put the data on chain? We need like a pilot project. I'm like, just put the data out there on the chain, like, and then, you know, just talk to developers, like you already do that. They already do that with open data platform. They're like, oh, we have this open data platform. But, you know, to use any of that in a smart contract, you'd have to put it on chain, so.
Yeah.
And I also think just like going into a city and putting every house this value on chain once a year would be a nice data set to just have on chain.
Yeah. Um,
That'd be awesome and really push the horizon of like the flavor of like types of projects that can be done.
Yeah.
I remember Nick had a friend that came to the office that was talking about like putting medical data on chain just for like open experimentation and for transparency about the prices of medical procedures across like different hospitals or different providers. Yeah. For me, like doing stuff that doesn't have to do with like price data is always fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we definitely can do our own projects, in-house projects. And with that, continue to improve our documentation and polish our processes. Because I really don't want to take like 20 projects the next year and our documentation and automated processes are not working.
Well, I think that's,
are
yeah,
the way that we need them to work so that we can actually function as a firm. So I think this is something more like, we would talk about, something where we have to balance between going, and doing all of these extra projects and making sure that what we have, it's actually useful for anybody to come and actually use it without needing to us to integrate from personally.
Yeah.
The new integration looks a little complicated. I haven't really looked too much into it, but it uses like bytes and stuff. So that's like new. I'm sure if I looked to do it'd be simple, but just looking over it, I'm like, I might need a little more.
yeah, well, I think that's the whole point of the using it ourselves, is so we have to force ourselves to go through the documentation and update it.
I found two critical bugs, just you building stuff with superfluid in their protocol. So there's nothing better than just like using it and building stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, even like, I think it's been great, like Spuddy's been hitting Telly hard and he finds tons of issues. Like if we weren't doing that on our own, we wouldn't be, we wouldn't have found so many of those. So it's awesome.
Just want to make, I want to make sure that it's reasonable.
For sure.
So it's not like, everything.
So
on
I'll
the
be
table.
pushing us forward, Brenda will be pulling us back.
No, I'll be making sure that it's actually polished.
Right.
There's nothing worse than like working with processes that are just hacked. Because then when you want to actually create something that is automated or something that works like nicely, or you don't have to worry so much about it, it's you can't do it because it's all hacky. It's like, it's just made it work for this one case, for this other case. And some of the things like, we know that we shouldn't have to like recreate over and over again. It should just work.
Yeah, I mean, in order to get to that point where, the team is more like stewards rather than like building new features and whatnot, our docs have to be like Stripe, GitHub level, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll get there.
Yeah, and that's a big feature that, it's probably
That's
a
what's
large
gonna
effort.
get with developers to not actually contact us, to
Yeah.
actually be able to use us without our help.
So, sounds like they can be joint efforts that help
Yeah.
each other.
That definitely, I mean, that's the only way that we're gonna actually get to it.
Yeah.
Maybe five parties.
So, I mean, another fun one that I want to work on, too, is it goes into, it's sort of like another example type thing, but I think we could work on just more gas efficient methods for putting data on chain. So similar to like, like all the housing prices in Philadelphia. How would you actually put that on chain? Like ideally, you could
Batch them together.
put it into a giant Merkle tree or something, and then
And then
That's
the line
right.
change.
teach people how to do it, and like, but we would want to make that a documented process, that way like people don't have to like, I have 100,000 data points, how do I put them all on chain? Not saying like, well, we'll figure it out, like, this is how you do it, this is, unfortunately, this is how you have to do it, and it's a Merkle tree, and you have to figure it out, but like, you can do it, and teaching people how to do those things is gonna be cool. Same with, whether it's token balances or bridging information, you could like build a light client from another system using Tellor, like lots and lots of possibilities, but we just actually have to probably build them out for people rather than, like, right now we accept bytes. You can obviously do it. It's just,
Why would you not build it? You can take fees on these things, like, you can
Sure.
build something that takes a fee and that can fund the whole thing, right? You really only need like one or two flagship products and that can generate a lot. I mean, Ricochet generates like 50 grand and all said and done and all this stuff, so like, it's possible, right?
Yeah.
That's just really a Teller product, so. Mostly a super cool product. A clean way you could save some gas, where you're still doing 5 ERC, 6 ERC 20 transfers and pay people in each commit?
No,
No. Okay.
We've changed that.
Some kind of rebasing to send them, like what do you guys do now? Something more efficient than 5 transactions
Now it's just one.
per person?
no,
No.
it's wherever,
There's not five, you're on like
yeah.
Tellor for 2019. You gotta,
I am.
yeah, we'll ignore Mike's comments for now.
Okay.
We'll
I
update
just
you
know
on
that
how
that's
Tellor's
sending a lot of ERC 20 transfers.
for sure. So those will be some fun projects we can do. And then I think on Telliot, the biggest thing with Telliot that we have to do is we're working on just getting it stable, and document it easy how to add a new data type. It's the next thing. And then the big thing I want to work on also over the next year is the disputable value monitor. So like, because ideally, like Tellor security works is if we have a dispute, the disputable thing, somebody automatically disputes it really fast, and then somebody else puts the data on chain really fast. How do we automate that and make sure it's secure? It's a super, super hard problem. But making sure that that whole system works as it should and continuing to test it out. It's a challenge, but
One thing I think about on that note is the person who does the dispute is the person who's in the best position to get that tip also.
yeah, to resubmit that.
It could happen like in one thing, do the dispute, wait for that transaction to succeed, and then also submit the value of the same like thing.
Yep. So,
The thing that I think is interesting about the DVM is that the disputable values monitor is that like currently the majority of clients or rather that the DVM sources objectivity from the same place that Telliot does, and the majority of reporters are Telliot. I think it's just a little interesting because I think like the source of objectivity that the DVM gets, or rather like what I mean is that where it defines like what the values are,
Right.
is really a harder problem than it sort of seems on face value in that sense, especially because like 90% of reporters or maybe more are like thinking in the same vein and getting truth from the same place as the DVM itself or the reporters themselves. But then I think the further problem is like something that I've been working on the DVM is like, okay, beyond the price feeds, like if we start expanding to things that are more subjective, like where is the DVM going to get its understanding of truth? And like, are there cases where like, disputable truth can like not be automated, but rather needs a little bit more of like human participation?
Yeah. That's how it's a super, super tough
Yeah,
problem.
and that's where we have to come up with thresholds, and people have to be able to set them to their own risk tolerances and actually go look at the data eventually.
Yeah.
Dispute something that is not obviously wrong.
But we've always said, and I think it's still true, that the user of the data is the person who should decide if the data is accurate or not. And they're not super active in participating in that part of it now, but I hope that they would be in the future.
Yeah, we could have a whole brainstorming session just on that.
Yeah.
Maybe we should.
For sure, not to
I think on the disputable values monitor, I mean, the first problem you mentioned, Tally, like that's mostly on testnet. On mainnet, it's not like the majority of reporters are using Telly.
for sure, that's true. So I was estimating.
I mean, we could always, every time that we have a user that actually comes to us, we could always make sure that we push them to maybe run their own DVM, whatever you guys are calling it.
well, yeah, you would want to tell people just set up a monitor.
Mhm.
Like,
As a user, it's in their best.
yeah, I mean, they shouldn't be running the disputable values monitor. They should be like setting up their own monitor for their own system. Based on what they think is correct. So,
The code for the disputable values model will be there, and You say like, well, here's what we do, but this is not gonna work for you because we're monitoring
Okay.
everything and you only need to monitor your data. So-
Yep.
Is it possible to just monitor one thing in the DVM?
Probably.
Could we?
Currently, no, but it's something we could build out, I think, for sure.
I mean, I agree that they should be the ones responsible for their own protocol, but we could, if it's an easy tool for them to run, like, hey, you know, you might wanna do this.
What is the DVM and being a monitor?
Disputable
Disputable
value.
values monitor.
Yeah, can we not start using acronyms? I hate acronyms.
No, I like acronyms. Disputable values monitor is such a mouthful.
Dude, acronyms suck.
I know how
I
they
disagree.
use stuff, so I would.
I'll
only-
send you an article, Telly.
Right.
I wanna monitor everything and put my.
Well, it doesn't automatically dispute.
Oh, it doesn't automatically.
Just
dispute.
Flags
Okay.
them.
Okay.
Since you-
It doesn't automatically dispute, it just notifies you if something is disputable via text message with Twilio.
Eat the cost if it was wrong or something.
It would suck.
YOLO mode.
Could do yellow mode.
DVM YOLO mode.
I mean, well, it's like, it's still, the dispute cost is still less than the winnings, right? What is it, 10 times less or?
Yeah.
So, you know, if it's.
1 out of 10 is
If it's
right,
at
I'm
least
good.
80% accurate, right?
It's already calculating.
Yeah.
Risk tolerance efficiency.
So. That's kind of all I got. I think. You know, it seems like we all sort of know the vision. It's gonna be this next year after 360 comes live, like it's gonna be a lot of documentation, a lot of making sure that it's really good, and then where we have free time, it's building out examples. And that's,
Well, that's where Superfluids got in trouble, because they built out an example that's just Ricochet. And I'm like super pissed, because they, not only did they build that, but they also just like took 2 people from Ricochet that built it. And, you know, it's like, you look at my code in there, and
we
there's a
won't be
bunch.
stealing it from
Anyway, I'm just
anybody.
saying, I would just say, if you're gonna build, these, yeah. Just don't rip off your customer stuff and
Yeah.
go to hackathons and try to find people who are gonna make competitive products. That's not nice.
Not cool. So that's one idea.
That-
So we build a.
Tellor share.
Well, there, I mean, you guys could, there's like a small part you could do it, but you'll have to pay a license.
We've entered the Shark Tank.
No, was anything that, you know, was just said like surprising to anybody, or you guys concerned about the path?
Full steam ahead, let's go.
Cool.
So you guys gonna like immediately start like forking Seller 360 and like tinkering around with a fork?
No,
You know, or is that? It's just gonna be sort of doing this other stuff and,
doing the other stuff,
Yeah.
keeping an eye on the space.
and then if
how
something,
incentives work.
okay,
I mean, yeah, probably, maybe like we can revisit it in 6 months and see like, how does it work?
what have
How's
we
it
learned?
working? Is there
Well,
anything?
based
we
on
need to-
the examples that we built, what's
Mhm.
it's broken or what needs.
Yeah, I mean, usually, like with anything, you know, like, luckily this is, you know, we're gonna be able to use the vast majority of what we've done over the last year, moving forward in Tellor 360, but. You give it 6 months and like, if we're not seeing like the usage or the product market fit we like, we. Come back to the table and figure out what's wrong.
Right,
Is this the
Um,
strategy of like creating products around Teller, or
Yeah.
is this just
No.
fixing Teller 360?
Fixing Teller in
Developing-
general.
Developing Teller 360.
Yeah, like how do you fix Teller to get that usage that we want, and you know, like. If it is one of those things where, you know, hopefully we get it to the point. That the tech is really good, and you know, like maybe the tech is to the point that it's. You know, like with 360, the tech is good, and we actually just, we're lacking on the biz dev side, we need to get out and do that, then it's like. Okay, well, if that's something that we,
Build financial
it-
products.
well, right, like if that's the problem, then. Brendan and I are now on the marketing team, and we're gonna, you guys have fun doing the dev stuff, and we're gonna be full-time. Trying to meet people, you know, so it depends on where do we see the biggest issue being, and that's gonna be. Where we go and what we do next, and that's kind of like the fun of being a startup, like, you know, I know one said like, when do we fire you? It's like, hopefully we never fire you, because. If you guys are flexible enough, we'll put you on where we can use you. You know, like Ryan's doing an awesome job, he's stepped up, he's becoming our front end developer. Yeah, so, you know, just find where you can add value and do it, so. Anyway, but we're doing good. So. Any final thoughts? Akram, you were quiet.
Akram, hey, what's up?
Hi, Mike. What's
All
up?
right, we see you on Wednesday.
Yeah, it's all good. No, I mean, I'm just looking forward to not being, I guess, just teaching instead of just doing.
Cool. Anybody else?
You guys gonna go back on the hackathon circuit? I noticed you haven't been sponsoring any hackathons.
We're
lately.
sponsoring Ethan right now.
Oh, are you right now? Oh, I just remember the other one, you guys didn't have a table, the Eat New York, Eat New York City.
Yours,
Yeah, it is, oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Anyway, all right, I'll stop recording. See you, Owen. See you, Tally.
We're gonna go back.
See you guys.
We're doing San Francisco.